Imagine trying to survive the immediate chaotic fallout of the 1968 Detroit riots.
Yeah.
But you aren't doing it by fighting, and you aren't doing it by hiding.
Right.
You're doing it by learning how to tell the exact right joke at the exact right moment, just to diffuse a room that is basically ready to explode.
Yeah, it's intense.
Today we're looking at a man who took those intense survival tactics from a racially divided city and somehow turned them into an absolute superpower in the classroom.
It's just a remarkable trajectory. It really is. We are looking at a veteran educator who goes by the pseudonym Papa Bear. And just to be completely clear right off the top, Papa Bear is a real living individual.
Yeah.
He actually just recently retired after a 3-decade career in the American public education system.
3 decades, wow.
Right, and he deliberately chooses to use the pseudonym because he wants to keep the spotlight off his own identity. He really wants the focus to stay on the mechanics of his journey and the lessons he's passing down.
Which is exactly what we are going to dig into for this deep dive.
Mm.
Our mission today is to explore the profound difference between simply possessing knowledge like, memorizing the textbook, and possessing the actual hard-won wisdom required to truly connect with people.
Exactly.
I mean, I want you, the listener, to just picture the best teacher you've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
The one who walks into a room and just has this undeniable gravity, right? You don't have to yell to get your attention. You just want to listen to them. We want to know exactly how someone builds that kind of presence.
And, well, the short answer is you don't build it in a teacher's college.
Right, yeah.
You build it through extreme friction. If we trace Papa Bear's path, we're essentially looking at a masterclass in how childhood adversity, cultural adaptation, and just raw survival mechanisms can perfectly forge an extraordinary educator.
So let's go back to the beginning, because the context here is just everything. Papa Bear is actually an immigrant. He was born in Europe and brought to the U.S. by his parents when he was just 2 years old.
Uh-huh.
And the family ends up settling in the Detroit metropolitan area right after 1968.
Right, which means they're arriving in the immediate aftermath of the 1968 race riots. And for those who might not know the deep history there, Detroit at that time was a total powder keg.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a period of immense historical and, systemic tension.
And right in the middle of this incredibly turbulent environment, you have this young white immigrant kid just entering the public elementary school system.
Yeah, it was an exceptionally difficult reality for him to navigate. The systemic hardships facing Detroit's Black community at that time were immense, and there was a lot of very valid anger.
Of course.
And in the middle of that environment, outside forces and community tensions were relentlessly blaming the demographic color of Papa Bear's school for those systemic hardships.
Wow.
So he's a white kid in a space where being white made you a very easy, very visible target for a lot of that friction.
Okay, so this is where I really need to stop and ask, how he didn't just get completely crushed by this. Because if you put an elementary school kid in an environment where they are the glaring outlier in a highly tense, sometimes hostile situation, the biological instinct is usually just to withdraw.
Right, yeah, to put your head down.
To stop talking and basically try to become invisible.
That is the standard fight-or-flight response. Yes, most kids would absolutely isolate. But what is so fascinating about Papa Bear's psychological development is that he went in the exact opposite direction.
Really?
Yeah, rather than building a wall between himself and the Black community he was surrounded by, he was deeply, profoundly influenced by them.
But how? How does a kid actually pull that off in the real world, on a playground or in a cafeteria?
Through an intense, rapid honing of his communication skills. He realized very quickly that he couldn't change what he looked like, so he had to figure out how to make interpersonal connections that completely bypassed skin color.
I see.
He had to prove his value to the group dynamically. And his primary tool for doing that was developing this razor-sharp sense of humor.
But we aren't just talking about a kid telling knock-knock jokes to make friends, are we?
No, absolutely not. He used humor strategically. He used it as a means of distracting and deflecting. Think of it like verbal judo.
Right.
If you're in an environment that operates strictly on the rules of survival of the fittest and you don't have physical dominance, you just have to develop a different kind of armor.
So it's like a chameleon developing camouflage.
Yeah.
Instead of physical armor, he's building rhetorical armor.
Exactly. When a tense situation would arise, maybe a threat of bullying or just the heavy ambient tension of the neighborhood, he learned how to read the room perfectly.
Wow.
He learned exactly what to say to break that tension, to make the aggressor laugh, to completely shift the energy of the space. Biologically speaking, when you make someone laugh, you alter their physical state.
You signal, I'm not a threat, I'm an asset.
Yes. He was learning how to weave himself into the social fabric because he couldn't blend into the physical
That
background.
makes total sense.
Yeah.
It's like he was running real-time sociological experiments every single day at recess.
Yeah, pretty much.
And the result of all this maneuvering is really beautiful, honestly,
Hmm.
because it wasn't just a survival trick. The adults in that community, the black men and women in his life, really took him in.
They did.
They fostered his deep love and understanding of black culture.
Which leads to a very profound early realization for him. As a young boy, completely immersed in this world, he began to understand that in his lived experience, blackness was not simply a color.
Right.
It was a way of life. It was a culture, a shared resilience, a very specific way of communicating and surviving.
But while he is having these deep, nuanced cultural epiphanies, his parents are living in a completely different reality.
Yes, and we have to view his parents through the lens of their own context, right? They were European immigrants trying to build a life in a new country. They did not understand the deep systemic dynamics of racism in America.
Yeah, they didn't grasp the historical forces driving the poverty and tension in Detroit.
Precisely. From their perspective, the environment simply felt dangerous. So they did what thousands of other families did during that specific era. They participated in the phenomenon sociologists call white flight.
Right.
They packed up and moved out of the city.
And this physical move creates what I think is the most mind-bending cultural paradox of this entire story. Papa Bear is 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
The family moves 20 miles outside of Detroit to a predominantly white, very sheltered suburban area. Now, I want you, the listener, to really put yourself in the shoes of an 11-year-old for a second.
It's tough.
Middle school is brutal. It's an ecosystem that demands total conformity. If you're the new kid and you act even slightly different than the established group, you're usually a prime target for getting bullied or ostracized.
That is the standard sociology of an American middle school, yes.
Right. So Papa Bear shows up. He has spent his entire formative childhood aggressively adapting to the urban culture of Detroit's public schools. He acts completely differently than these suburban kids.
Yeah, it's night and day.
So how on earth does he not get destroyed socially? Because according to the source, he somehow instantly becomes the most popular kid in the entire school.
It seems totally counterintuitive until you look at what he actually represented to those suburban kids. You have to remember how he presented himself. He had what the black community in Detroit referred to as soul.
Okay.
He had the hip walk and the hip talk.
The swagger, basically. He carried himself with the rhythm of the city.
Exactly. And to a bunch of sheltered suburban white kids in the 1970s, that urban culture was incredibly alluring. It represented rebellion, it represented cool,
Right.
but usually that culture felt inaccessible or intimidating to them. Sociologically speaking, Papa Bear acted as a cultural bridge.
Oh, I see. Because he looked like them, it was safe.
Precisely. He was bringing the very real, very potent elements of black urban culture directly to his white suburban peers. But he was wrapping it up in a package that wasn't, tabooish for them to accept.
Interesting.
He made the cool factor accessible without the perceived danger they had been taught to fear.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
But there is a massive irony here that we have to talk about. Because on paper, he's the king of the school. He's getting all this positive attention. He is wildly popular.
Right.
But internally, there's a total disconnect. He never actually understood the white culture he had just been thrown into.
And this is a vital nuance about identity. Even though he looked like the kids in the suburbs, he didn't share their way of life. He didn't understand their social cues, their anxieties, or their worldview.
Wow.
He never felt he truly fit in with them.
He didn't speak their invisible language.
Right. And at the same time, we have to be very clear about his relationship with his past. He never felt he was black, nor did he ever want to be black.
Okay, yeah.
He didn't suffer from an identity crisis in that regard. He simply knew how to maneuver better among black people. That was the culture that forged him.
This is where he felt comfortable.
Exactly. That was where he felt socially and emotionally literate, and that internal alignment feeling most at home in spaces that mirrored his Detroit upbringing carried all the way into his adulthood.
Okay, so let's look at that adulthood, because this is where all these deeply ingrained survival tactics collide with the professional world. And honestly, it starts with a hilarious misstep.
It really does.
Papa Bear goes to college, and you would think, given everything we just discussed, that he would go straight into sociology or communications. But no, he starts out studying pre-med.
Right, which is a very common trajectory for children of immigrants pursuing a highly stable, prestigious, definitively clear career path like medicine.
Sure.
But his initial path was quickly derailed by a specific pivotal moment. He had to give a presentation to a large group of college students.
And he absolutely blows the doors off the place.
It was such a massive success, the energy in the room was so palpable that the professor actually intervened.
Wait, really? The professor stepped in?
Yes. After the presentation, the professor pulled him aside and insisted quite firmly that his true calling was not in a medical clinic, but in the field of education.
I love that professor.
Hmm.
Because I'm picturing Papa Bear as someone who owns this incredibly powerful, highly tuned race car engine, which is his ability to read a room, to diffuse tension, to transfer energy and captivate an audience. He has this massive engine, but by studying pre-med, he's basically dropping it into a farm tractor.
That's a great way to put it.
It'll run, but it's completely the wrong vehicle for what he's built to do.
That is a very accurate way to look at it. Medicine absolutely requires deep knowledge and intense study. But the professor recognized a completely different mechanism at play in Papa Bear.
Right.
Education, at its highest level, is a performance of empathy and authority. The professor saw that his specific gift for commanding an audience was perfectly suited for a classroom.
So he actually listens to the guy. He pivots entirely.
He does. He changes his major, and he eventually receives a bachelor's degree in science along with his teaching certification. But the really interesting piece of his academic journey is what he does next.
What's that?
He goes on to receive a master's degree in bilingual and bicultural education.
Which is just the most poetic academic choice he could have possibly made.
It is incredibly fitting, because what does bilingual and bicultural education actually study? It studies how to bridge distinct worlds. It looks at how language and culture impact learning.
Right.
When you look at Papa Bear's life, a European immigrant who spent his formative years absorbing the Black culture of Detroit and his adolescence navigating the white culture of the suburbs, he had been living a brutally practical version of bicultural education his entire life.
Wow, yeah.
Pursuing that master's degree was essentially the formalization of the survival skills he had been practicing since he was a toddler.
He finally got the academic language to describe what he had been doing in the cafeteria at age 11. But, and this is the craziest part of the whole story to me, getting those degrees only gave him the what.
Right.
He knows the science, he understands the bicultural theory, he has the state certification. But when he actually steps into a classroom to begin what will become a 3-decade career, well, he struggles.
It is a surprising detail, isn't it?
It's baffling. I mean, this is a guy who gave a presentation so good it changed his major. How is he struggling to teach elementary school kids?
Because it highlights a very crucial distinction in human communication. Being a captivating public speaker is not the same mechanism as being an effective teacher.
Oh, I see.
A speaker delivers information to a passive audience. A teacher has to create an environment where the audience actively engages back.
That's a huge difference.
Huge! Papa Bear realized very quickly that average teachers simply teach. They stand at the front, they deliver the curriculum, they tell you to open your book to page 42, and they hope you absorb it.
Right.
But extraordinary teachers do something entirely different. They have to find their voice.
Let's break that down, because finding your voice can sound like, a cheesy inspirational poster. What did that actually look like in Papa Bear's classroom?
In his experience, finding his voice meant projecting a very specific kind of energy. It is an energy that invites students to freely come to you.
Okay.
It's creating an atmosphere where a student genuinely wants to learn from you, rather than just feeling legally obligated to sit at their desk.
And how do you manufacture that energy? I mean, you can't just read a book on it. So what did he do?
He went right back to the crucible.
Ah,
He reached into his past and pulled out the exact same communication skills, the exact same tension-breaking humor, and the exact same cultural bridging tactics he used to survive the Detroit public schools.
that's amazing. He took his rhetorical armor and turned it into pedagogy.
And the result of that integration was transformative. By leaning into those deeply ingrained real-world skills, he became categorized as a highly effective elementary school teacher. He could read when a kid in the back row was shutting down, and he knew exactly what tone or what joke to use to bring them back into the fold without embarrassing them.
He knew how to diffuse the room.
Precisely. And while this effectiveness naturally resonated with all of his students, it's deeply important to note that it resonated mostly with his Black students.
Well, yeah, because he spoke their language.
Not just English.
But the cultural language of respect, of rhythm, of navigating a world that isn't always fair.
Yeah.
He understood their way of life implicitly.
Yes, and that connection extended far beyond the students. His ability to maneuver, to empathize, and to project that specific gravity we talked about earlier made him highly sought after by Black adults in the community as well.
Really, like the parents and staff.
Yes, whether it was in the teacher's lounge, during staff meetings, or at parent-teacher conferences, they always wanted to be around him. He carried a genuine, unforced connection into every single room he entered.
Which really forces you to step back and ask some hard questions about how we actually train people to lead in this country. I mean, think about it. If you're listening to this right now, think about standard textbook professional training.
Right.
We spend billions of dollars trying to teach people leadership and empathy in corporate seminars and college lecture halls. But can the most critical skills needed to truly inspire people, the cultural empathy, the ability to read the ambient tension of a room and safely diffuse it, can those things ever actually be learned from a PowerPoint presentation?
Probably not.
Or are they strictly born out of the friction of real messy life? Papa Bear had the shiny master's degree, sure, but his actual voice, the thing that made him a legend to his students that came from the streets of Detroit.
And that profound distinction is exactly why he chose the pseudonym Papa Bear in the first place.
Oh, I'm so glad we are finally getting to the name. Why Papa Bear?
He uses that specific name because, as he tells his students and his colleagues, whenever he enters a room, he is always bringing one of two things to the table. He is either bringing knowledge or he is bringing wisdom.
And he draws a very sharp, very deliberate line between those two concepts, doesn't he? I love how he defines this for his students.
Yeah.
He tells them that knowledge is the stuff you learn through schooling. You go to class, you do the homework, you pass the standardized test, you acquire knowledge.
But wisdom, he argues, is an entirely different mechanism. Wisdom cannot be learned from a book.
Right.
Wisdom is learned exclusively through mistakes, through failure, and through survival.
He literally tells his students that wisdom cannot be taught at universities.
Yeah.
You can get a PhD and still be completely devoid of wisdom.
Exactly. And he points out that this is the exact reason why, sociologically, wisdom is almost exclusively associated with senior citizens.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
They are the only ones who have had the sheer amount of time required to accumulate enough failures, enough terrible mistakes, and enough real-world friction to slowly forge their basic knowledge into actual wisdom.
It's the difference between knowing the lesson plan and knowing how to reach the kid who is having a terrible day and is completely ignoring the lesson plan. Knowledge gets you the job. Wisdom is what actually impacts the child.
Which leaves us with a very compelling and maybe a slightly uncomfortable question to consider today.
Let's hear it.
We currently live in a society that is hyper-focused on optimization. We try to engineer environments for our children and for ourselves that are perfectly structured.
Oh, yeah.
We want the straight-A transcript, the flawless resume, the seamless career path. We are obsessed with avoiding failure.
We basically want to bubble wrap our entire existence.
Right. But if Papa Bear's philosophy holds true, if true wisdom can only be forged in the fires of failure, mistakes, and real-world friction, are our modern, highly structured environments actually depriving you of the very conditions required to become truly wise? By testing purely for knowledge and punishing mistakes so severely, are we systematically preventing the development of wisdom?
That is heavy.
Yeah.
Are we bubble wrapping ourselves so much that we can't ever develop that gravity we talked about at the very beginning?
Exactly.
Because when you picture the best teacher you ever had, it wasn't their flawless memorization of the curriculum that changed your life. They were the best because their very presence carried the weight of their own survival, their own massive mistakes, and their own profound wisdom. They didn't just teach you a subject, they taught you how to navigate the world.
They brought their entire messy, complicated journey into the classroom, and they used it as a bridge.
They absolutely did. Well, that is a perfect place to leave it for today. We want to enthusiastically thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Papa Bear. Keep seeking out that knowledge wherever you can find it, but please do not be afraid of the friction and the mistakes that will eventually bring you wisdom. Catch you next time.